Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for being here this evening. My name is Roland Spatugan.
And I'm Justine Manesh.
And welcome to Pasadena Photography Arts. Before we begin this evening, we would like to acknowledge the Tongva, who are the native people of these ancestral lands that are now present-day Pasadena. We give thanks for their opportunity to live, work, and learn on their traditional homeland. Tonight's event is OpenShow Pasadena East LA number 42. OpenShow is an international platform that allows emerging artists to present their work to a live audience via slideshow format. This gives a unique opportunity for audience members to meet and engage with the artists behind the work. Pasadena Photography Arts is an emerged project of the Fulcrum Arts. Our goal is to spotlight diverse photography projects, and since we transitioned to an online format in 2020, we have expanded our reach to include artists from all over the country and beyond. We are also committed to sponsoring educational programs by accomplished photography professionals. If you're interested in submitting your work to a future OpenShow event or would like to receive notifications for any of our upcoming events, then please join our mailing list at our website, pasadenaphotographyarts.org. Also, you can reach us on our social media platforms on Facebook, Pasadena Photo Arts, and on Instagram at Pasadena Photo Arts.
If you would like to support our programs or have your name displayed as a donator, please email us about how you can get involved and sponsor our next open show or forum events. As a volunteer organization, PPA works hard to keep the cost of these programs to a minimum. As you can imagine, there are expenses involved, so we are asking you to donate whatever you can by visiting our website link found in the chat. It is pasadenaphotographyarts.org. Click on one of the donate buttons if you would like to donate, and we also are asking for your feedback. So if you have any comments or suggestions, please email us at the address in the chat. Our next event this month is an artist talk with Lydia Panos on May 24th. This will be a discussion about her practice, her new monograph, and how the series of portraits, still lifes, and ghosts fit into her practice. If you would like to sign up or learn more about the event, please see the link to the event in the chat.
The audience will remain muted during the duration of this event. Each artist will discuss their project and processes while we observe their body of work through a slideshow. And then there will be a Q&A portion. We highly encourage you to place your questions in the chat feature, which will be monitored. The event will be recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube at Pasadena Photography Arts. Okay, with that, let's get this party started, shall we? Let's go ahead and present our, I'm sorry, before we go on with our first presenter, the theme of our event this evening is a story worth telling. And what we did was we had an open call for artists to submit bodies of work that told a story, a narration on some sort of concept or some particular issue that they wanted to spotlight. And I'm very happy to present 4 different visual storytellers this evening and their stories. So let's go ahead and get started with our first presenter. Sani Anasazi is an Iranian artist based in the US. Her journey in art began in her childhood with her grandfather, Ostad Ismail Arjang, the renowned father of Iranian sculpting and etching. Afsaneh works at the intersection of photography and mixed media. Through collage work, she problematizes objectifications inherent within photographic representation to depict the nuanced realities of Iranian women. Her work frames ever-present coercive gazes upon women's bodies, showing the power of that gaze to dismember and reduce women's bodies to objects of desire. Tonight, presenting her series, Dismembering Gazes, please welcome Afsaneh Aynesazi.
Thanks, Caroline, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. First, I wanted to thank Pasadena Photography Arts for creating this opportunity to share my work and talk about this series. I want to start by reading a section from my artist statement. Working with mixed media, I make images concerning the nuanced identities of women in contemporary Iran. I seek to disrupt binaries prevalent in photography of non-Western subjects, traditional, modern, East, West, veiled, unveiled, free, oppressed, and so on. In these works, I use an approach at the intersection of photography, collage, and glass that breaks fixed images to display the nuances inherent within an Iranian women's cosmopolitan reality. The themes of judgment and of coercive gaze manifest in the work. Through the symbols of the eyes and the lens, I explore unspoken judgment, which operates as an oppressive tool used to force women into different molds. For instance, Western imperial gazes can reduce women to victims. Domestic authoritarian gazes can reduce them to moral threats, and patriarchal stares may reduce them to object of desire. While such oppressive peering is invisible, it is a force that fills empty space, and it felt on women's bodies. My work in glass frames such empty spaces, giving it materiality, while simultaneously depicting women's bodies as dismembered and reduced to essentialist symbols that render their reality almost invisible. Now, I want to continue by talking about some of my works that represents more my approach and practice to photomaking best. So, Rollins, I want to ask you that if it's possible, like go to the slide here.
Okay, is that one?
Yeah, this is,
okay.
Yes, thank you. The name of this work is Trouble. Here's a source of anxiety for me and many other Iranian women in Iran. Not because of beliefs or religion, but mostly because of government enforcement and getting in trouble. In Iran, veiling the hair has been compulsory since 1979. And showing too much hair, you may be taken to the police station and they will call your father to come pick you up as if you are a mischievous child. Something quite embarrassing for adult women. Hair is not important to us women by itself, and it is not considered by us as something overtly sexual. But because of enforcement, it is an anxiety we all live within public spaces. On the other hand, the actual hand is not only extremely sexual through touch, but it is also cause of danger on buses or in the street through unprovoked sexual advances, resulting in constant fear of sexual harassment. Because of this, I'm always struck by the arbitrary nature of the veil, because in theory, it is supposed to protect us from harassment, supposedly, but in practice, it is like a paper shield that is being attacked by daggers and bullets. In my other work, it's a green scarf. Yeah, this is so. I titled this work Dagger Eyes and Paper Shields. I think through these concepts in the artwork, here the veil is a paper shield when met with the deep cutting of sharp peering that is projected onto women's bodies. And in this way, the compulsory covering of hair feels arbitrary. And I think the works, like the slides can go.
Okay, so let me go back to I think where we kind of left off, maybe right there. I'll go ahead and continue playing here.
Sure, thank you. And this is a window into the thoughts in my mind when I make art. I'm working through these pressures, anxieties, and traumas that have been embedded in my subconscious. At the same time, I'm also being vigilant that these traumas do not become symbols that will essentialize and represent me and other Iranian women's identities as a whole. We are not defined by our traumas. Our reality should not be reduced to our struggles. It is a burden too often forced onto women in the Middle East to have their identity reduced to their struggles. And one of the reasons I was drawn to mixed media was because of my own discomfort with the ways in which Orientalist, Western, and patriarchal gazes had represented Iranian women through essentialist representations. Fixed images can also become expectations. In reaction to this feeling, my process is a cycle of constructing, deconstructing, and reconstructing. This is the role of collaging glass and fabric in my work. It allows me to create more nuanced image and something that is constant motion and changing, just as people's identities are always changing and developing. And now I want to talk more about the process, how I make my work. And at first, like, I'm taking photo of the portraits of women and their eyes, their hands, or other parts of their bodies. And sometimes I'm taking self-portraits. And in next step, I print my photos and I cut and make collage. And the next step is I cast glass and I add my collage piece to my glass frame, and I make my mixed media glass. And the last step is taking photo of my mixed media glass. And I think this is the same as people changing through the time. They are constructing themselves, deconstructing themselves, reconstructing themselves, and people's identities keep changing through the time. And I want my process to be a reflection of this reality. And I think this is my story and the process, how I make my work. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Afsaneh. And if there's anyone in the audience that has any questions for her, please, I highly encourage you to enter.
I will be happy to
in the chat. I have a question. So you mentioned your work, you're incorporating the use of glass in your work. Can you tell us about, is there a reason or choices behind that? Is there any significance to using that in your work?
Honestly, I have to say first that I'm an MFA graduate student, like MFA photography student, sorry. And like in my last year, I started to take working with different mediums like glass and fabric more. And I find out like the clearness of the glass, as I mentioned in my artist statement. It was like invisible gap that you can I think with making glass, I could present my artwork better and show that invisible feeling, I mean the coercive gaze, better to my audience. So that's why I was thinking it's a great medium to use for this series. And yeah, that's it. I think this is the reason that I started to make.
Yeah, we have a comment from Leslie. Your glass also makes me think it's ice. Is this the case that you see ice too? And is there symbolism in this? Thank you. It's beautiful work.
Thank you so much. Actually, like each of like, because I try to like work with glass with different techniques. So some of them, yeah. So some of like casting process was intentionally like going to like closer to glass texture, or some of them are like bubbly things. I mean, like kind of, I can say that yes, I knew that like the texture of the glass sometimes is close to the ice to me. So that's why, based on that, I was like choosing my piece to add and make my artwork. And sometimes I have to say that glass has more agency to like inspire me to make my artwork. So yeah, I can say that.
Do you have any questions, Justine, for?
It's great work. It kind of reminds me of Shirin Neshat. It's very beautiful and almost poetic.
Yes, thank you so much.
I think going on the glass, it kind of looks like you're fossilizing like almost the body parts, and yet it's so when we think of it as like a fossil, you're then furthering the objective. It's like an object now, right? And it's basically what you're saying. So it's when I was looking at that, I felt like I'm looking at some sort of artifact or fossil, as if it's an object sort of disconnected from the human being. And that I get your point there. I think it's a very interesting and wonderful use of that medium to incorporate that with your multimedia presentation here.
Thank you so much.
Got a couple comments here. One from Caroline, really amazing work. The glass works so well with your images and also the idea behind the work. And one from Esther, beautiful works. I see glass being a transparent protective barrier between the photographer and the subject itself. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much, Afsaneh. This is wonderful.
Opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah.
So much.
And this is I think it's wonderful work you're doing and spotlighting this. And please continue to do what you're doing. And once again, if you want to see more of her work, please check out the chat section for her contact information and her social media platforms. Thanks again, Afsaneh.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I want to hand it off now to my co-host, Justine, to introduce the next presenter.
Thank you, Roland. Our next artist is Rebekah Alviani. Rebekah is a nationally exhibited, published, and award-winning lens-based artist. She holds an AST in photography, a BFA in graphic design, plus minors in art history and marketing, and an MFA in digital arts. She's most recently been accepted into juried exhibitions in Oregon, Vermont, and California. Rebekah has served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Ghana, West Africa. Her primary assignment was to serve as an art teacher in a school for the deaf, while also working on secondary assignments, including the presidency of a media production group, the co-authoring and design of a medical sign language handbook, and the development of a Ghanaian sign language curriculum. Rebekah's service advanced her love of teaching, and she now works as a professional artist educator teaching digital imaging and video. Here to present Transience, an exploration of objecthood and object memory, is Rebekah Alviani.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And I just want to say how happy I am to be here and honored that I am to be able to share this work, especially through Pasadena Photography Arts. So to get into it, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit of the history of this work, and particularly the location that this work was focused on and inspired by. I first heard of this small town in Western Pennsylvania called Yellow Dog Village through a Facebook page that catered to urban explorers. I was drawn in specifically by images and comments of an entire town that had been abandoned. And then I began doing some of my own research, and I discovered that whenever the community members left, when they vacated the town, they also left significant amounts of personal items. And this really troubled me. It really bothered me. I had a transient upbringing, resulting in 7 moves in a 14-year period to 6 continental states. I remember home being within the belongings that my family and I would take from property to property. So for me, home was held within these objects. It still is. This is why I was so incredibly unsettled by the history of Yellow Dog Village. The village had actually been completely abandoned in 2010 due to contaminated water sources. Community members were ultimately given 48 hours to vacate the town, and some chose to collect all of their belongings and leave their home in clean, presentable condition. Others, as mentioned earlier, left multiple belongings, which included furniture, clothing, children's toys, and even family photographs. Because of how meaningful objects are to me and in my life, I simply could not fathom the idea of abandoning personal items and leaving them for outsiders to come and scrutinize. So to process this, I became the outsider. I traveled over 2,300 miles, making 4 visits in a 6-month period to visit Yellow Dog Village. I worked to develop a relationship with the homes and the objects left within them, specifically to understand why they had been left. While I was working in the village, I often wondered, had the owners just emotionally outgrown these items? In the wake of this trauma from leaving their homes, were these items just suddenly deemed completely unimportant? Or were the memories of these objects tainted by the eviction of the community? As I made these visits to Yellow Dog, I underwent an emotional transformation within the space. So the photographic work I was producing also goes through its own immense transformation from a digital image to a tangible object. Much of the destruction within the village has actually occurred naturally due to moisture in the air. Well, there is vandalism, and it's very minimal vandalism in terms of graffiti. The majority of it has actually been windows that are smashed out, doors that have been removed. And this is what ultimately allows all of this moisture to come in and fill the homes. You go in, you see roofs collapsing, you see carpets growing moss, ceiling fan blades that are curling to almost 90-degree angles. So I took what was happening in the village and I decided to apply this process to photographic prints on paper that had first been wheat pasted. This creates these unique cracks, discoloration, and other visual events that lead the images to serve as more than just items of documentation. Once I print these images, I then put them through this deterioration process. I set them outside for a minimum of 2 weeks. And this is indicative of the deterioration occurring within Yellow Dog Village. Through working to document this community as well as the community's objects, I ultimately created a participatory experience that encourages viewers to really understand the village, as well as find meanings within the concepts of objecthood and object memory. Object memory is a term I have coined and begun using that references memories individuals associate with either a specific object or similar objects that are tied closely to a unique event. It's my hope to share both the emotional and sensory experience that I had within the village with viewer participants. In doing so, I hope that it will foster reconnections with this idea of object memory. So that's all I really got for you guys right now. I would definitely love it if anyone has any questions or any comments.
Thank you so much, Rebekah. That was amazing. Yeah, please, if anyone has any questions, please go ahead and enter them in the chat. Do you have any questions for her right now?
I just have a comment. I love how you connected the story of the image with the paper itself and that aging process. I think that really pulls it together, and it's a very powerful work. So thank you so much for that presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I do appreciate the process of rethinking what a photograph should look like in terms of its being tangible. instead of printing on, you know, a regular photo paper, how it's presented in this format, which really kind of goes with the theme and the story that you are presenting. And the fact, as Justine said, the way you're even aging it for a couple of weeks, so the work of art itself is kind of you know, emulating what you're trying to depict also as well. So I think it's a great way to see photography in a new way. I'm curious to know, if you exhibit this, how is it presented to the public?
So in exhibition, and I've had to exhibit this in a few different ways. The original intention is it is a full sensory installation. So all of the prints that you are currently seeing on the screen, there's actually about a total of 100 of these prints of varying sizes, from small little 2x3 inch to 2x3 foot. And they are laid out on the ground with dried leaves and with carpet that I intentionally stained and added rust to. And I also incorporate audio recordings of both the space of the ambient sounds of Yellow Dog Village, but I also have recordings from the man who currently owns the property, as well as somebody who used to live near the village. So the goal is to, as I said, it's meant to evoke the same emotions and sensory experience that I've had in the village. I'm just bringing the village to the gallery.
Wow, what a great way to sort of immerse a viewer to this experience. We got a question from the audience. Lori Pond's asking, can you explain in detail your wheat paste process?
Yes, absolutely. So the wheat paste, and for those who don't know, wheat paste is very old, very simple trick of flour and water. Bring it together, bring it to a boil and stir it for half an hour. And what I was doing was I was printing these images on paper. I would wheat paste them onto pieces of wallpaper. And I specifically chose wallpaper because I wanted to get a little bit of extra texture in the piece. So the wheat pasting process alone, because of the water, wets the print, and the ink does begin to discolor a little bit. They dry overnight, and even this image here, the Steelers Nation, you can see a bit of the wheat paste on the edges. It looks like dried Elmer's glue. But that wheat paste causes them to completely curl as they are drying up from the wallpaper. So once they are dried, once the wheat paste has set, then I put them outdoors for about 2 weeks. And I've done this with just paper, which is predominantly what you're seeing here. I've also done wheat pasting the prints onto pieces of plywood, which creates a similar effect. It just creates more of that stereotypical flat, almost framed presentation.
Caroline is asking if you could repeat, where did you say this village was?
Yes, it is in Western Pennsylvania. It's the closest town to it is Worthington, Pennsylvania. It's about 45 minutes to an hour-ish outside of Pittsburgh.
Great. And we have a comment from Dwayne. I love how you've chosen for the more analog aging process and the time when a digital approach could be more convenient, quicker process. This lends a more emotional appeal to my eyes. Kudos. And Esther, do you want to read that one from Esther?
Sure. She says, thank you for sharing. I relate with object memories, which I find just as powerful as scent memories. I've moved and lived in 3 continents in my first 15 years of life, and what Ms. Alviani shared resonates with my own personal experiences. Thank you so much. Your work invokes lots of emotions.
I want to add a question there. I'd like to know when you're going to come out to LA so I can be immersed in this project.
I would love to bring this to LA. I would also have the opportunity to visit family that lives out there, so that would be wonderful.
Well, there you go. And you have an audience here who would love to immerse themselves with your work as well.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rebekah. Roland will be introducing the next artist.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next artist is Jason Daly. Jason Daly hails from Kansas City and is an editorial and commercial photographer who has been in the creative spaces since 2003. What he does provides him the opportunity to spend time in the city as well as rural, quiet locations off the beaten path. The time spent in both areas is equally important to who he is and to his worldview. He believes that the greatest component of photography is the moment of connection, reciprocity, of community as humans in society. I fully agree, Jason. He has been exploring the idea that social fabrics are made up of subcultures since he can remember. He is picking at the threads and on the lookout for the underdogs, flightless birds, unsung heroes, and invisible society. He also explores culture and subculture in portraits. Here this evening to present American Trucker, please welcome Jason Daly.
All right, well, thank you so much, Rollins, and Justine and Pasadena Photo Arts. While everyone else, I think, was, got more Zoom meetings than they could handle the past 2 years, I don't think I got enough. So I'm still a little rough with all this. I just have a statement here that about the project that I've been kind of writing off and on for the past few months. But in 2020, I started a portrait series of long haul truckers. And this was during the height of the pandemic. And I was curious about the people who were unable to shelter in place and were still out on the roads moving essential and luxury goods, hundreds of miles a day, thousands of miles each week. Living just a few miles from a major interstate truck stop, I began spending hours each week with my camera, photographing and talking with the individuals, couples and families who drove transportation rigs for a living. Later calling them to conduct phone interviews. They talked about the daily realities of living on the road, what they learned, how they survive, what they love and what they hate about their jobs. All of this too was after, jumping in and trying to figure out what I was going to do, during the pandemic, and a lot of the work that I was doing, kind of commercial work, kind of dried up. And so I jumped out and did a lot of work without anybody, a lot of landscapes and studio type still lifes. But I think ultimately it came back to me wanting to get out and connect with people. I think that's why I do photography and what I love about doing this. So this really just kind of fit better into the kind of person I am than what I was trying to do, just to kind of stay busy in the past year and a half or so. I arrived at photography on seemingly the last days of my time as an undergrad, having spent time at university bouncing around from one visual art to another. So of course I have a BA in architecture that I immediately ignored and jumped right into photography. As Roland said, I've been working for the past 20 years as an editorial portrait and landscape photographer. But I always find myself wanting to extend that visual storytelling into wider themes and projects with interviews, interactive conceptual projects, and in-depth examinations of themes that aren't readily supported through commercial projects. And I think that's where this project is right now. I started collecting, meeting these drivers and collecting their stories and collecting audio and talking to them about everything that's going on. And so right now, continuing to develop what this is going to look like in a gallery or in a presentation. How do we bring, I think, these guys together with people maybe who don't understand them as well. And so I'm looking forward to doing that. So this endeavor has allowed me to focus on one specific creative project that expands my range as a storyteller and artist. And examines the human stories behind an essential component in contemporary American culture and economic structure. So far, the biggest challenge is kind of having them join me in this, in putting together this, the multimedia aspect. I'm asking them for interviews, which is simple enough if I can catch them on the phone, but also to send me video and things like that of places they are. You know, a lot of these guys are traveling coast to coast, and they're in cities, and then they're in the mountains, and then they're in the plains. So they're really all over the place, and I'd love to have them be more a part of what I'm doing than just me kind of out there saying, well, here's what I've got, here's what I captured. I want them to capture some stuff as well. Yeah, I think that's really about all I had to say about this. You know, when I did start, it was really just getting out and you know, just going to meet some people and going to talk to people and practice talking to strangers and you know, getting them to pose for me and stop what they're doing and take some time with me. But what I have learned is that these guys, the stories are all wildly different. You know, some guys drive, some guys just started, some guys have been driving for 40 years, some guys are, you know, they're so familiar with everything that they can tell you exactly what's going on at any given moment and on any highway. And other guys that are just starting and they are so stressed out and nervous behind the wheel that it's a little alarming. But you know, it's just the amount of stories I'm getting and the amount of backgrounds and from these guys has just been fantastic so far. So oh yeah, that's really all I've got. If anybody has any questions, I'd love to field some.
Great. Thanks so much, Jason. And while we wait for the questions to come in the chat, I have a question. First of all, I want to say that, you know, you didn't waste your architectural studies. I definitely see your architectural eye in this imagery. That's definitely there. I also want to say that, you know, my personal work deals with identity and visibility, and I want to commend you for approaching that on a subject matter that we tend to not really think about. Right. We don't think about the things that we get in this country. You know, when we go to the store, you know, when we order something on Amazon and it shows up the same day we order it, you know, we don't think about those things because we are privileged to live in this country. And it doesn't happen by magic, although it seems like it, but we have these people that are responsible for our lifestyle. And, you know, I want to commend you for spotlighting that. My question to you is, you know, this may be helpful for other photographers in the audience. How do you, as a stranger, approach somebody and ask them to be a participant in your series?
Yeah, I appreciate all your comments and all your kind words. You know, I think it is really just that just keep doing it. You know, you just keep doing it. For every, you know, most of these guys are fine with what I'm doing. I just walk up and explain a little bit about what I'm doing and do they mind being a part of this? I can tell pretty fast. There are some guys that are just like, they just give me the hand and, you know, and I walk away. A lot of guys are sitting in their trucks, so I'll just kind of hold my camera up and kind of wave it around at them, and they'll either not do anything, which is an invitation for me to kind of go up and stand by the window until they unroll it, or they'll just kind of shake their heads and wave me off. So sometimes there's a little bit of safety if they're in their truck and they can kind of give me a visual cue, but it's usually just going up and telling them what I'm doing, talking a little bit about what I understand about them and their job. The more that I do this, the better I get at it, specifically with the truckers, because I can talk to them faster these days about their industry than I could when I started a year and a half ago. So, you know, just jumping jumping right in and telling them what I'm doing. And most of them, probably I would say 75, 80% are perfectly willing to be, to work with me on this. Give me a few minutes if they've got the time.
David McGrath had a series of questions, but I think you answered, but I think one of them he did ask, did some truckers tell you to mind your own business? I guess, I think you said that they may have waved their hand, but did you have any kind of negative kind of reaction from any of your interactions?
I did not have any aggressive negativity. I mean, nobody jumping out, yelling at me or anything, but some people, they just don't, they're not interested. They don't want to do it. I think it's, I try not to be pushy, but I want them to tell me no, maybe twice, if I can get them to do that. You know, I know I can tell kind of off the bat if I should ask them again or not. So a lot of times I will, you know, just kind of, I'll pose a question a different way if they tell me no, or if it sounds like they're trying to tell me no. And if they say that twice, then I move on. You know, I don't waste a lot of time trying to convince them. Even sometimes if they look like they're only halfway interested or they're not interested, I won't really try to talk them into it. And I'll just kind of move on. You know, usually these days the truck stops are very full. So, you know, if you get there at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock at night, some days, you know, there's 20 trucks to choose from. So there's, you know, each time I stop, it probably takes me 20 minutes of just, I talk to them a little while first, ask them about what's going on, tell them what I'm doing. So I don't rush it. It's all film, medium format. So, which has allowed me to really move a lot slower, which is great. You know, I talk to them while I'm setting everything up and trying to nail that focus, all that stuff.
Great. I think we have a few more comments here in the chat.
Yep,
Justine.
we're seeing a comment by Bill Wishner. He's saying powerful images that can be more powerful with their own words. Another comment from Esther saying, thank you for sharing these beautiful, powerful images. I love how Mr. Daly labeled them as unsung heroes. While many complained about bare shelves in stores, these brave men and women did not shy away from doing what nobody would have volunteered to do and deliver the goods across the country. We have another question. Why have you chosen to share them in both black and white and color?
Good question. So when I started, I was just shooting black and white, and so I had all this black and white film, and then I started exploring color, and I think I like the color better. So I've been shooting color since then, and I've got a few rolls of black and white. Every once in a while I'll get caught out there with only black and white. But it was just kind of what I had on at the time, and some of these, so a lot of the black and white images are early images when I first started going out, and then the color are usually the later images.
Great, thanks for that. I want to get through the questions here as quick as I can before we go to our next presenter. We have one from Erica here. Really interesting theme. Images make me want to hear more of their stories. The guy who travels with his dog, the family of 3, the difficulties of finding a rig, and how do they keep it going? Did they ever get kind of revealing with their kind of personal stories with you?
Oh yeah. You know, it's interesting because I do want to know. I want to know who they are. I want to know what they're about. And so, but I don't want to hear everything. And so I'm learning, you know, the more that I go do this, I'm learning kind of how to guide the conversations, you know, into things that maybe I haven't heard. Sometimes they'll start talking about the same things, but I mean, some of these guys, you know, they like the guy that looked like he's got the long white hair. My wife calls him the Santa Claus. And he was a corporate officer for like, I don't know, 25, 30 years before he decided he did not want to do that anymore, this guy. And he just wanted to drive his truck and just kind of escape. The town that he lived in was overrun by, he said, meth heads, people stealing stuff all the time. So he was happy to get a job where he was alone. He could just go do his thing and not worry about a lot of that stuff. This guy right here is from, I think he's Iranian. And he's been driving for like, he's out of Chicago. He's been driving for a long time. These guys, she's just kind of jumped in for the ride with him. He's out of Pennsylvania somewhere. But they all have different stories, and most, if they're willing to kind of wait and let me photograph them, then they're willing to tell me all about what they've got going on. And I have written some of their stories a little bit on my Instagram feed on a few of the ones that I've posted, just talking a little bit about maybe some of the things that they've talked about in our conversations.
Great. And one final question before we move on to our next presenter. This hopefully will take care of two questions. One similar question posed by Derek and then David. Did your subjects have they seen your work? And did you send them images, or how have they seen any of this work that you've done with them?
Yeah. Yeah. So as I got more images, I put them on my phone, and I usually will just kind of pull it out and show them what I've done so far. So they'll see some of these images, and I think it helps that, to maybe put them at ease a little bit, to see that I have done a lot of other truckers. I've done a lot of their colleagues, their peers. And so maybe it relaxes them a little bit. So I do show them what I've done. I always get their information. And so I always send them a photo as well, like a digital version. I'd be happy to send prints, but I think 1 or 2 out of like 35 have actually replied to me. So I don't know if they've received them or not. If you hear from them, let me know.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your work here. It's, putting a spotlight again on humanity. And I myself gravitate to those stories. And I think we're kind of all doing that this evening. That's kind of why I love this theme that we have this evening. It's about storytelling. It's about finding our humanity through photography. With that, I am going to give it to my co-host Justine to introduce the next presenter.
Okay, thank you, Roland. Our next artist is Caroline Nicola. Caroline uses photography as a way to explore themes of possibility and reverence and connections to land and water. She uses different mediums depending on the project: film cameras, lensless cameras, cameraless photography, and her iPhone. Her process involves play and serendipity and listening for the story that wants to emerge over the course of a project. Caroline earned a BA in sociology from UCSC and studied photography at Cabrillo College. After graduating from the University of California, Santa Cruz, she lived as a forest dweller and squatter in the forest above UCSC. Here to present A Means of Remembrance, Reflections on Being a Forest Dweller, is Caroline Nicola.
Thank you, Justine and Roland, and thank you everybody for being here.
Welcome, and it's on play right now. So
okay. Well, we called ourselves forest dwellers. We lived on the central coast of California in a forest that concealed a sprinkling of hand-built homes, invisible to most people, on land that wasn't ours. We made up a vibrant, hidden, and connected community. This land held more than most people could see: pockets of temporary autonomous zones, areas where common rules didn't necessarily apply. For me, the forest was a space of intimacy and possibility. Once my feet left the last bit of pavement, my shoes crunched the gravel of a fire road through a mixed redwood forest, opening into a meadow and eventually turning off onto smaller single path trails. Sometimes I'd be walking with a friend or friends, and my eyes would follow the silhouetted tree line and stars above as we talked and laughed. And sometimes the moon walked me home. I would arrive at my bedroom, an A-frame tent in a ring of redwoods after walking for about 20 minutes in the forest. My living room and kitchen were nearby in a yurt-style structure. This was my home for most of 5 years. This work is spatially anchored in that ring of redwoods I used to sleep and dream in. Since I left, I have been listening for the story that wants to be told about this place, and it comes in bits and pieces. It feels like an old story that I'm trying to remember, and these images are clues left behind, a trail map, a means of remembrance. Initially, I was drawn to the beauty of a few objects that were in a process of decay and began making images of them. Some books my friend and I found decomposing in the forest stuff while we were hiking off trail, and my own broom, the one I used to sweep my yurt floor with and accidentally left outside after I moved. Then I started leaving blank journals and postcards on or under the forest stuff and burying a glass teapot in that ring of redwoods. I felt like I was putting my ear to the ground, listening, asking the forest to reveal itself. And when it does, the mycelium and slugs make their marks, tree seeds stain, leaves stick, moisture dissolves. The forest floor speaks of decay, transformation, and nourishment. I used a 4x5 camera to photograph these objects because I wanted a specific shallow depth of field. Then I began making camograms of the same objects, adding complementary image and a different perspective. A photogram is the earliest photography, dating back to the late 1700s. It is the image left by objects on light-sensitive paper after being exposed to light. A chemogram is the newest of the alternative processes invented in the 1950s, made by playing with photographic chemistry. Finally, I used a 4x5 pinhole camera to make images with people and the forest. Pinhole imagery can appear more dreamlike, which is what I wanted, and the simplicity of the camera matched the simplicity and meaningful design of a tent for shelter. Taken together, this work is about liberated areas of land, time, or imagination. Like homes hidden in the forest, it looks for a resting place that is timeless in an ever-changing world, a sanctuary that offers connection, possibility, and intimacy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Do we have any questions for Caroline in chat?
Yeah, go ahead and please submit your questions. I'll start off with the question. You mentioned your process using analog photography, 4x5. During your time spent as a forest dweller, were you actually processing your film also during this time at the locations as well?
You know, I didn't take that many pictures in the forest. I was doing some other film photography, but yeah, this didn't really happen until afterwards, except the one, or I guess there's two images with Lee, this person here. He had lived in the forest for 10 years and he was in the process of taking apart his home because he got found out. And so those are the only images that actually, I had moved out already, but those were the only images that were done while people that I knew were living in the forest.
And we're seeing a comment here from Lori Pond. She says, beautifully poetic work. Love your color palette too.
Thank you.
And another comment, the first pic of the man holding something on a road. Can you explain how you achieved that? Amazing pictures.
Yeah, that was a double exposure. And so I had my 4x5 pinhole camera on a tripod, and so I exposed it with him, and then he stepped out of the frame, and then I exposed it again without moving the camera. So that's why he's semi-transparent.
Okay, and then we have another comment from Janet. Stunning, beautiful, inspirational. Your words carried me away while my eyes feasted on the imagery. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
And Erica, she's is asking, is there a meaning for the double exposure of the person, which looks like a ghost-like offering on a path?
I think I just wanted something. I started wanting some transparent elements in the pinhole images, and it is like, you know, we were there, but now we're not there. He's also holding one of these old books that we found in the forest. So I thought it was just more metaphorical, like, you know, the book holding something about, you know, something of the past. And so I like the meaning just more as like a dream-like image.
Yeah, I agree. And I think seeing imagery like this, where it's a double exposure, creating like a ghost-like image, for me, when I see this, I think it's a representation of a memory.
Yeah.
Everything that we're doing, even including what's happening right now in front of us during this presentation, it's fleeting, right? How do we, if we want to record something, document something, how do we do that? Photography is definitely one medium, and how do we represent these memories? And I think displaying it this way, I think is a very creative and I think for me even a more accurate way of kind of displaying a memory, because it's, as I said, it's very temporal. Yeah, and I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
A lot of love in the chat here. Let's see if we find another question. Let's see. Beautiful work. Thank you for sharing your art. From Tara. Esther, are all these exposures multiple exposures? They are absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah, are most of them multiple exposures, just long exposures?
No, actually, I'm thinking, I think in the ones that I showed you, the only one that was a multiple exposure was that first one. I don't think any of the other ones were double exposures that I remember.
We have another comment here from Barbara. I love how your processes, pinhole camera, shallow depth of field, and so on, prompt the viewer to somehow work through things as through the trees in the forest.
Nice. Thank you, Barbara.
Carmina, hi, Caroline, wonderful work. How long do some of the images take to make? For example, from the time to burying an object to making the final image.
Most of them don't take long. There's some that are in a eroded negative, and so some of the pinhole images I did with a positive negative film, and then I thought I would use the positive and scan it, and so the negative film is supposed to be cleared or washed, so it has a film on it. And then after years, I went back and then I scanned the negatives, and I liked how it showed this texture on it. So that was those are the only ones that had some time. But otherwise, they're not, so like this one is one that it's like an uncleared negative and eroded with time, and then I like the significance of that.
Yeah, I do. I have that sense of time definitely passing, whether it's fleeting or just accumulation of it in this series. Very dreamlike, and some of it, and for me, a little bit haunting too. Just the idea of you know, forest dwelling. That, you know, I'm a city boy myself, you know, so the only kind of camping I'd be doing is glamping, and that's just about it.
Well, they had some pretty fancy houses up there. You might like it.
Oh, really?
I mean, they're not there anymore, but yeah, like real glass windows, real doors, 2x4s. So yeah, people made different things. So some, yeah. And some were like glamping.
Yeah, well, you mentioned one of them was discovered, so I guess your presence there wasn't technically, I guess, legal. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we were hidden, so we weren't supposed to be on that land, but the land.
So yeah. I wouldn't find a Yelp review about this place.
Right. No yelping if you come up there.
Another comment in the chat from Barbara. Impressive project, ethereal and beautiful. So much texture. Yes, I definitely agree. Is this body of work one you are continuously working on? And yeah, and if so, how, you know, are you still, you know, how long? I guess how long, if you are continuing, how do you know when you're done?
Yeah, it's mostly done. Thank you, Barbara. And it's mostly done. There's a few pinhole images that I feel I want to do to complete it, but I would say it's like 90% done. Just a few more to add.
And with that, how would you present it, like, you know, in terms of to the public in a sort of gallery format, if you would at all?
Yeah, I think they would just be regular prints, you know, maybe like 16x20. It could be larger because most of them are 4x5 negatives. So they could be bigger too.
That's great. Thank you so much, Caroline.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we got one more. We'll do one final one from Leslie here. I think you just mentioned what sizes are the images. I love the stories you told too. Do the photographs describe how you felt about living in the wilderness and woods?
I mean, I loved living up there. I love nature. But I think it's like I try to figure out what the images want to say or what the story wants to say. So while it's like based in my experience, it's more I'm trying to listen to what, it's not like I'm trying to tell my story, but there's some story I feel about living there that wants to be told. So so I think that's, you know, maybe if it was me, it wouldn't be so like, I mean, I do love the beauty in things that are decaying, but so yeah, I hope that answered that question.
Well, thank you so much, Caroline, for your work and sharing it with us this evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so I want to thank all of you this evening for attending our event. If you enjoyed watching our event and events similar to this, I would highly encourage you to visit our website, PasadenaPhotographyArts.org, and make a donation. You know, any amount will go a long way, and it'll help sustain programming such as this, spotlighting emerging artists, and for this event, we're spotlighting humanity. And I love all the work that we were able to curate and present today. Before we leave, I would like to spotlight the artists. So give me a second here to do that. And that way we could see them. We have everybody here. Okay, add a spotlight. There. We're missing. There we are. These are your artists for this evening. Thank you so much. Let's give them all a round of applause. And I want the artists to take a virtual bow. It's great. Thank you so much, everybody. Our next event is Forum. Check out our website, join our newsletter so you can get notifications for upcoming events. Until then, we will see you next time. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.